Hello and welcome everyone. Anthropour brings to you this first of its kind series called Learning Anthropology. Here we will be learning, unlearning and relearning anthropological concepts, understand anthropology from its root to present day ventures, trying to bring from this discipline from the academic to applications and apply it, and how we can apply our theoretical knowledge in this practical world. So if you're a student of anthropology or you might be engaged in anthropology, then this series is for you. And before moving on, we would like to say that please like, share, comment and subscribe our channel. And if you really need more content and more regular update on anthropology, please follow the links given below in the description section. So moving on, we will begin our first episode. It will start by explaining the etymological significance of the term anthropology. Then we will discuss how it got originated, the term got originated, who used it in whose work it was first published, and finally concluding the episode with a few definitions given by prominent and pioneered anthropologists during the 19th century. So here it goes. Now, we all know the term etymology basically means the study of different words, the origin of their words, and how the meanings and both the literal and contextual meanings have changed throughout years. And we will be understanding anthropology in those terms. Here we see this flowchart. This is one of the most popular and accepted ways of understanding the origin of the term anthropology. We here find that it has been derived from two different words. One is anthropos, the other is logos. Anthropos meaning human, mankind, humanity, persons and so on, while logos means meaning of, knowledge of, field of study and so on. Thus, combining these meanings, we get the basic definition of this term, that is, anthropology is the study of humankind. Now we got the basic meaning of the term anthropology, that it has been derived from two different words, anthropos and logos. But the question is, where do we find, or where did we find the words anthropos and logos? From which language did these two words come from? So, but going or following the conventional way, as many other English words have been derived from, anthropos too has been derived from the Greek language. It was because in the ancient time, Greek civilization had a significant influence on Western culture, and we can find these influences in different disciplines such as philosophy, literature, science, and so on. But the word logos, or the term logos, we see that though there are different discussions and debates going on, but logos have no independent meaning in the Greek language. So where does logos come from? Logos come from the Latin word logia and not from the Greek word. So anthropology is actually a mixture or a combination of two different languages. One is Greek language and the other is Latin language. Moving on, we will be focusing on these two interesting facts. The first is that where the term originated. We see that it first appeared in the Renaissance in French Academia Latin Anthropology, means during the Renaissance period, which would be around 14th century. And the French word anthropology arose in that time, or in those days. And from anthropology we get the English translated word anthropology. And it is this fact that some anthropologists say that the term anthropology was derived from the Latin word anthropologia, but ultimately anthropos has its ultimate root in the Greek language anthropos. Now we will be focusing in this point. Here it says that Neo-Latin derivation was always accepted, where anthropo comes from Greek anthropos and logi comes from Latin logia. This is nothing new. We have been discussing a few moments ago that anthropo comes from the Greek and logia comes from the Latin word. Now, What is this Neo-Latin derivation? Neo-Latin language. So Neo-Latin language is nothing but it was the modern version of the Latin language which was mostly used during the Italian Renaissance period. And that is why it has been termed as the Neo-Latin language. Proceeding ahead, there are mentioned two interesting facts. Now we know and we have gathered knowledge from different literature that Aristotle, it was him who coined the term anthropology. But how many of us know who actually used the term or who was the first one who used the term? So it was Magnus Hunt, another Greek philosopher, who first used the term anthropology in his work Anthropologium, and he published it in Leipzig in the year 1501. But it was Richard Harvey, as I have mentioned here. It was Richard Harvey who first used the English translated word anthropology as a natural science in his publication Philadelphus, which was a defense of the legend of Brutus in British history, and this was published in the year 1593. After understanding who first used it and who in both Greek language and then translating it into English language, here you can see another name mentioned as James Hunt. Do you have any idea who James Hunt is? Now let me tell you. Does the name Lewis Carroll ring any bell? Yes, Lewis Carroll was the writer of the famous children's book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Now, what is this connection? Let me tell you. James Hunt was not only an anthropologist, but also he was a speech therapist based in London, England, and Lewis Carroll was one of his clients. Now, moving on, it was James Hunt. And focusing on James Hunt, let me tell you another interesting fact that it was him who was the founder of London Anthropological Society in 1863, where he presided the meeting, and there he gave his first ever speech on anthropology, and there he attempted to salvage the etymological meaning of anthropology. He also said that he found anthropologues from Aristotle in a standard ancient Greek dictionary, where he said he defined the word as speaking or dealing with. So, another point that I would like to mention here is that though it was during the Renaissance period, that is, it was around 14th century that the term was being used. Therefore, it was in the 19th century that ultimately the discipline anthropology started evolving and developing. After this, we come to the last segment of our episode, that is the definitions. So, as a start, we take the definition given by Paul Broca. Now, who is Paul Broca? He is known as the pioneer in physical anthropology, though he was a natural scientist and he gave the definition of anthropology from a naturalist point of view. But he relied more on scientific evidences and not on religious texts, unlike his contemporaries. So, the definition given by him goes like: anthropology is a science which has for its object the study of the human race, considered as a whole, in its separate individuality and in its relation with the rest of nature. Just as I have mentioned, that Paul Broca relied more on scientific evidences, that is why his definition says that anthropology is a science. And in those times, or even different disciplines that got evolved, the main focus was to study the human classification, how human populations could be grouped or classified or categorized into different categories and classifications. And that's when the concept of race arose, and people started categorizing human populations into different races. Therefore, we see that Paul Broca was also one of them, and he studied and gave the definition of anthropology from that point of view. Now, our next definition is by Alphonse Bertillon. Do you see this bearded man? He is known as the father of anthropometry and also the father of criminal investigation. Bertillon was the first person to develop a system to describe the human body parts through anthropometry or taking physical measurements and applied it in law enforcement to identify criminals. So, the definition given by him goes as: anthropology is a pure science and concrete, having for its aim the thorough knowledge of the human group considered, number one, in each of the typical divisions as to variety, race, species, compared with each other, and in relation to their respective external conditions. And number two, in its ensemble and in its relation with the rest of the animal world. The next definition is by Jean Louis Armand de Quatrefages de Bria. He is also a French person and he was a prominent figure in natural sciences. In the year 1855, he was called to be the chair of anthropology and ethnology in the Museum of Natural History, Paris, France. And therefore, we see that the definition given by him was based on natural history. So here it goes. Anthropology is the natural history of man considered monographically, as a zoologist studying animal would understand it. Moving ahead, the next definition is by W. Edwards, though a Frenchman but with Jamaican background. Now, why W. Edwards is famous for? He is famous for because he is the father of ethnology in France. And he was a pioneer anthropologist, and also he was the first one to discuss the concept of race. This was because of the justification for French nationalism. And the definition goes by man in his entirety, that is to say, in his physical and moral relations, is the subject of anthropology. And here we find a picture of James Hunt, the Englishman, the anthropologist and speech therapist. And as we have already discussed about him, the definition given by James Hunt goes as: anthropology is the science of man and of mankind. The last definition of today's episode is by Clyde Cluckhorn, an American anthropologist, a very famous one, that too. And his definition is: anthropology is the sciences of human similarities and differences. This definition is very much famous and is very much in use even in contemporary times. We find this definition given at the undergraduate level. He had also given the famous phrase that is, anthropology is the mirror for man. At last, we have concluded today's episode. We hope that you have enjoyed and learned a bit more about anthropology. Subsequently, we will be covering more such informations and concepts. In the next episode, we will be covering the different branches of anthropology and its applications a little bit, and maybe the scope also. So let's meet in the next episode. We will discuss more on anthropology. Till then, give a thumbs up to this video if you find it useful, and share it among your friends if they might also need it. Comment any suggestions that you may have, and subscribe our channel for staying up to date. Thank you.